Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Welcome everybody to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from a stagecoach. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. Welcome back, everyone. We've got a busy episode of the pod today. We've got a number of quick hitters in the motorsports world. We've got the F1 Canadian Grand Prix recap, some League of Legends, some Magic the Gathering, some Valorant VCT Masters Tokyo. That's a mouthful, but a lot on the agenda. It's good to see you, my friend.
Yeah, good to see you too. Coming off a hot race companion. Check it out on the YouTube. Tell your friends, new episodes of the pod every Wednesday. But here we
Thursday.
are. Well, I mean, we're recording on Wednesday.
Yeah, that's true. Fair.
But I guess you're right ultimately. But that's enough chitter chatter here for the beginning of the episode. Our fans know where to find us. Aaron, how have you been for the last couple days?
I've been doing pretty good overall. And so I'll get into my Rose, Thorn, and Seed for this week. But
Let's do it.
To kick it off, my Thorn, I'll start there. But my Thorn this week, it's not anything too crazy. It's got its good, its bad, but it's a short week of work, which you would imagine is like great, awesome, wonderful. However, that I found out that I would have off Monday for Juneteenth at 3 p.m. on Friday. So I had to kind of spend the last 2 hours of the end of last week scrambling to like reorganize my Monday and everything that I thought I was going to have to get things in order and ready for the week and all. And then I'm off on Friday for another wedding that I'll be going out to in Western Pennsylvania. So I'm cramming a whole lot into 3 days worth of work, which is just a bit stressful. I've got my ducks in a row, but I just don't like feeling like I'm having to cram 5 days of work into 3 days. It's not ideal.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You know, we only have so many hours in the day, and I imagine that's got to be really tough to try and just cram it all in there.
Yeah, so doing my best, but like I said, there's the positives of not having to work a full 5 day week, but the negatives of just trying to make sure everything is organized and ready for especially Friday when I'll be off, but the office is open. So yeah, one more day to get that all situated. And then my seed is that our dog park for the side of the building is actually starting to come along. We hadn't seen progress in quite a while. And then today they were laying down the ground tarp. They put down a lot of like turf. I guess they just bought like turf grass and rolled it out and onto this area that was just dirt and rocks and whatever. And so that is coming along nicely. It'll probably, I would imagine, be done in the next, I don't know, hopefully week or so, which would be wonderful to just be able to take Senna out at night, feel a little bit more secure and everything, as opposed to just wandering out to the side of the street out in front of the building. So looking forward to that being done. It's been a long time coming. It was promised when we moved in over a year ago. So I'm glad that is almost here.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, it's nice to have a little peace of mind for our critters. Yeah, you want them to have good facilities.
Yeah, and I mean, even like tonight, I was taking her out right before we started, and there was this guy who was either having some sort of episode or on some sort of drugs, just bugging out right out in front of the building. So then I didn't feel comfortable like taking Senna out there. So I took her down to the garage, out the back of the building, over to the other side of the building and all. And I'm like, it would just be nice if I could just go out the side door. It's all fenced in and everything, and just let her out there. But I digress. It's just a nice thing. I'm definitely looking forward to that being all wrapped up.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to it too.
So
I need that little pupper to have good facilities and, for you to be comfortable there as well.
yeah, I need some space for her to run around like a little maniac. But it'll be good and hopefully wrapped up soon with the construction. But my rose this week, I wrapped around to it after all the training and everything that I did with the running over the past like month and a half, which I mean really wasn't an insane amount of training, but I got my body in shape. Ran the 5 miler on Friday and it went swimmingly. I ended up running with Colleen's sister-in-law the entire time. We both kept a pretty quick clip. We went about 8 minute miles the whole way through, which was faster than any of my training runs had been. And I felt pretty good. A little bit of soreness here and there, a little ankle soreness, a little bit of knee tenderness, but no serious pain or anything even after the race. So I've taken a few days off, and now I'm like, okay, I've like let my body recover from that a little bit, and now I'm ready to start getting back into that running routine a little bit. Then now I just have to figure out what the next target will be. So.
Very cool, man. Well, yeah, and I'm happy to hear that, like, with no, notable discomfort, really, because I know part of the early conversations was, knee pain and feeling like really out of the training loop there. So I'm happy to hear that it kind of culminated in, what I would call, a success. And 8 minute mile pace, that's pretty solid to keep up throughout. Yeah, man, I'm proud of you. That's sick.
And about a minute faster than or per mile. So like I wanted to be under 9 minute miles. That was my like personal target. I didn't know if I was going to be able to do that because I hadn't been in the training runs, and the course was decently tough. A number of like tougher hills, but once I kind of got into the swing of things and everything, I really felt like moving and grooving and felt good. So I'm happy to have good news about the race and everything. No big wins or anything like that on my end, but other than a win in terms of my personal kind of goals for the race. So definitely a success.
Yeah, of course. I mean, just a finish is pretty solid. I know eventually, you can shoot for more, but there's, got to start somewhere. So that's sweet.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's my rose, thorn, and seed for this week. Let's hear what you've got going on over your way for the people.
So my rose here for the week is just a little bit of an upgrade. I was able to take an old piece of technology, kind of upgrade it into something different. So it was an old. I don't know. Yeah, I guess you would just call it a toy slash video game. It was Sarah's. She didn't have much use for it anymore, so I was able to convert that, use it to make, fund some MTG maybe purchases down the road. Did my best not to spend it all in one place. So I was very happy about that. Very thankful to Sarah for, she just, to a certain degree, she just kind of was like, yeah, I don't need this. You benefit from it now. So it was super helpful. And then my thorn and seed here for the week are kind of along the same lines. So me and Sarah have just playing heck of a lot of hunt. She's been in the aim labs practicing like crazy, and there's a certain degree to which like that's a seed because you can definitely see she's getting better. There's like moments of like really like, oh wow, like really has a handle on things, but there is still like some very learning pains moments and just like, oh my god, like this is not going well. And it is a tough game when things are going okay. So when it goes poorly, it can be pretty brain breaking to a certain degree. So we've been having fun with it, and not taking ourselves too seriously. But yeah, there's We're definitely learning a lot about the game.
It's I'd be curious to hear more about it, but it's always like I found Hunt very tough in the first place. I was getting frustrated a lot because it's very difficult to gauge how well you're doing if you don't win.
Mm-hmm.
Like my biggest frustrations were just like getting no data back after like dying other than, oh, you got killed from this far away. Like it didn't tell me if I had almost killed the other guy. I had no idea of if my shots were even really hitting them in a
Mm-hmm.
fight and everything. And so from someone who's not played like that style of video game really
Or
at
like
all before
really
this.
video
Or
games much
yeah,
at
like
all.
video games much at all, but especially like this is her first person shooter probably.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. Not an easy one um to just dive into and not really like or to learn without the data of like, oh, am I getting better at all?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're kind of in limbo there a little bit, at least with the data.
Well, I think that's where the aim lapses come in because like she can see her accuracy increasing, her like score increasing on the same exercise for the same chunk of time. So there are like quantifiable increases, and it's fun to a certain degree. Then like and this is like where the seed of it comes in is like it's fun now to go through the go through the pains of all this because on the other side it's like an actual solid good hunt partner that you can actually win games with. So I think that would be something sweet to look forward to. But yeah, that's my
Nice.
rose thorn seed for the week.
Solid. Well, getting into to some of the meat of the episode with some quick hitters, I wanted to touch on a couple other motorsports. One that I've kind of been following a little bit is the MotoGP. And so MotoGP is motorcycle racing. They race on a lot of the same circuits and everything that F1 does, but also on a number of other ones just around the world. But one of the kind of bigger guys in this MotoGP series, Mark Marquez, he's been pretty near the top competitor for a couple years now. Had 5 crashes this past weekend at the Germany MotoGP and ended up with a fractured hand and ended up withdrawing from the race ahead of the race day. But it just kind of it like blew my mind reading that because I like have watched the races and everything, and when they crash, like they crash hard, like
Mm-hmm.
whether you it's a bad crash or not, all of them have to hurt. Like they go
Mm-hmm.
skittering across the blacktop in their race suits, oftentimes tumbling through the big gravel runoff areas and everything on the sides. It looks pretty brutal every time. So for him to have even been out there after 4 to even crash a 5th time, like during the weekend, one, just a rough weekend, but two, it's pretty impressive how durable and I guess like persistent some of those guys are. I don't think I'd be wanting to hop back on a bike after binning it that many times.
And maybe not and maybe not long term, but just for the weekend. I'm
Oh yeah.
curious, is there a noted reason for that lack of
I
performance on the weekend? Because I don't know a lot about MotoGP, but it sounds as though this is pretty out of form for this guy.
Yeah, to be honest, not that I can really not that I could see or anything like that. I'm not really sure entirely why he had that many incidents. It seemed pretty uncommon.
Gotcha.
And he has been, I'm trying to look for the actual, the standings here, but, yeah, so right now he's in the bottom half of the standings. I think in part due to just not finishing 4 of the 8 races so far.
Oh, whoa.
But he previously has been pretty successful. I think it was just a weekend that he couldn't quite get a feel for the car or for the motorcycle and the tire wear and whatnot. Because it's definitely a tough thing to figure out. It's a very interesting sport just to watch because the how the tires go through their like warming phases and getting into the right like zones temperature wise and everything. You can really see the guys find a lot of extra pace when they have their tires in the right window and everything.
Oh, that's cool.
But it definitely just in general, I think was a tough weekend. Couldn't quite get the feel. In F1, we'll see drivers just be like, yeah, I just couldn't get hook the car up for the weekend. I struggled a lot with the setup or this or that. I think it's just same kind of thing. Just struggled on the weekend, but with a motorcycle, it's a lot easier to take a dive.
Yeah, I guess my question is more in the realm of if you're not finding the pace, that's one thing, but performance issues that are leading to crashes is another. Like my first thought is like, is this guy ill when you hear something like that?
Gotcha. No, I think it's just a little different with MotoGP because it is motorcycle racing. I think it's just that on those weekends where you're not, and of course you're losing out on time to be able to practice and get a good feel for the motorcycle when you're crashing in the practice sessions and everything. So I think it's a little bit of probably like loss of time that hampered towards the end of his weekend before he withdrew. And I mean, I'm sure after falling and taking a little bit of a beating from the ground, you're probably not feeling in your tip-top shape in terms of driving either. So it's probably a little bit of just a combination of those factors all combining into just the continual, like, again and again kind of issues. So but moving over to Indy Car, one of the other motorsports that we follow, they had the Sanzio GP this past weekend, and in that as well, throughout the weekend, drivers were just struggling a ton with grip on the circuit. Some of the higher speed areas, the grass on the side, if drivers dipped a tire unintentionally by going just a smidge too wide into the grass, they were spinning, crashing out pretty frequently. Alex Palou crashed in practice session 2. Grosjean had a couple of incidents there. He was sliding around. He had an incident where he kind of unintentionally was blocking willpower. So similarly to what we saw with Lewis Hamilton and George Russell the other weekend, where I think George drifted maybe a little to the side and blocked Lewis off. Similar thing with Grosjean. I just don't think he realized how close willpower was.
Gotcha.
And then willpower and Scott Dixon actually collided. Scott Dixon had spun, came back on track, saw Grosjean coming, and made room for him, but did not see willpower close behind, and then just darted back into the racing line to try and get a move on right as willpower came by and collided with him. So just in the practice sessions, there were a lot of those incidents. Qualifying, again, lots of spins. Willpower went off track after his car was rebuilt for the qualifying. He went off and was just like ramping through these small little bumps in the grass on the side of the circuit. And Colton Herta it also spun off early in the qualifying, but ended up progressing through and actually taking pole position after that incident. So yeah, just all through the initial, even before the race, just a kind of crazy weekend there, and lots of issues with the grip on the track.
Now, what's been Colton Herta's success so far this season? Now, is this pole like pretty common, or has this been an outlier for the season?
So I don't think has had many poles this season, but he's just been decent. Like he's had a pretty good year so far. Typically, like when he's finishing up, like decently high on the grid. He was out in the first race, P7, P4. I wish there was an easier way to look through this. P14. And so, P9. So lots of just like solid finishes, nothing outrageous, but really consistently staying in the top half. He's kind of similar to Leclerc, had really good like 1 lap pace from what I remember seeing and everything in the qualifying sessions. I think he may have another pole position on the year, but in general he's had some pretty solid pace. Just hasn't quite been able to hook it up all the way through race, which included this weekend. He started on pole. He ends up, for his last pit stop, pitting 1 lap earlier than everyone else, and so he was had 1 lap less of fuel for the last few laps of the race, and was kind of having. So I guess like he had a full tank that was just gonna get him to the end of the race. Everyone else pitted a lap later, so they had additional fuel to like really gun it. Where he's more having to like lift and coast into corners and all, and goes from P1 with I think about 10 laps to go and ends up finishing P5, just due to not having the fuel in the car to really push at the end, which we've talked about a little bit before with like Grosjean having all the push to pass but not having enough fuel to actually utilize all the seconds he's had left and everything. So a tough way for that to go for Colton. After starting out P1, he led 33 laps, was just running a really nice race, and that one pit decision just made all the difference for the race for him.
So the difference of that pit stop was the difference of time, other teams decided to refuel in that time as well, and he just was not able to because he was trying to defend.
No, so when they came in for their last pit stops, and I don't remember exactly what lap, but say Colton pitted on lap 40 out of 50.
Okay.
He fills up his tank, and they're like, yep, this, like, your full tank is going to get you 10 laps or whatever. So he's got enough to get to lap 50 to get to the end of the race. Everyone else pits on lap 41, and so they fill up their whole fuel tank and everything, but they have 1 extra lap worth of fuel that they can use to hit their push to pass, or to like burn a higher fuel load, like just like gun it and really like just use that fuel longer. So he probably could have waited an extra lap to pit and would have been in a similar fight with everyone else at the end. But because they pitted a lap early, he didn't have enough fuel to use for those to hold his position and kind of stay out in front and everything.
I
So
understand. So, how many refuels happen throughout an IndyCar race on average then? Or were you just using number like the
I was
tens
I was
just for
throwing
ease?
I was throwing that out for ease primarily,
Okay,
but
that's cool.
usually, so I'll hit the pit stop summary here, but most it looks like most drivers stopped 3 times. Like the 3 stop was the ideal strategy,
And do you
and
refuel every time?
every time, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
but
Gotcha.
you, depending on your strategy and all, you might fuel up less or more so that it
Right.
takes less time. So, like if you're going on to a stint with the alternate like soft tires, and you know, oh, these tires are only going to be good for 8 laps or whatever, you're only going to put about that much fuel. Where if you're on the other tires, like the harder tires that should last you 20 laps, then
Mm-hmm.
you're going to fill up a lot more the pit stop as you're putting on those tires. So that you can like not slow down your pit stop by adding all this extra unneeded fuel. You're keeping the car lighter, all those kinds of
Yep.
combination of things. So
Gotcha. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Just when you were throwing that out there, I was like, "Wait, what? They're like refueling this much?" But yeah, I guess that makes sense because if it's allowed, you probably there is some there's probably some weight to like speed ratio that they're like really saving out like saving on with the refuel, so it's like kind of in their best interest to do it that way. Okay, that's like pretty interesting then. So yeah,
yeah.
so now I understand the original point where you're saying they're fueling up for this specific stint, but because they did it later, they'll have a gallon's or a lap's worth of fuel left in the bottom, and you're
Right.
saying they can use that for the turbo nos buttons.
Exactly. And yeah.
Gotcha. Okay,
Or like
that's cool.
we've seen F1 drivers at periods of time, like the teams will fuel the cars up slightly less in
Mm-hmm.
expectation of like a race having safety cars or yellows and stuff that they're burning less fuel. But then if that doesn't happen, then the drivers are being told to like lift and coast into the corner before your brake. Don't like use your like be on the accelerator the entire way down the straight and then hit the
Mm-hmm.
brake and go. They're like hit it most of the way and then let off and let the car slow down naturally and then like hit your brakes and take it through the corner to save fuel and all. Um, so yeah, just a tough, just unfortunate kind of pit decision. I don't know if it was a data thing that they did it or if it was just a mistake that they were like, oh, we're meant to come in the next lap, or we thought that the fuel was going to be fine for this many laps or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, tough one for him. Grosjean had a tough day too. He dropped a tire in the grass, like I was talking about with the practice sessions, and just went off and crashed. So another non-finish for him for the race. So the last 3 races he's crashed out of or had contact and everything. So a tough stint, but it was really something that we were seeing from a number of drivers all week long. There were a number of other drivers that crashed out during the race as well, and didn't make it all the way through. So yeah, just tough weekend. But Alex Pillow, who I had mentioned crashed in the practice session too,
Mm-hmm.
had to have the car rebuilt and everything, a lot of work put in, ends up coming back and winning the race. So
Whoa.
without the time to get the setup and everything back to the way that he was feeling good and comfortable, he still pulled out a win there, which was really impressive. He had a really nice drive, and so now he has kind of stretched his lead a bit in the IndyCar standings. He's up 75 points or so on Marcus
Whoa.
Ericsson, which is I'd say a couple. Well, so P1 in IndyCar gets you around 50 points. It like shifts around based on which race, and it's weighted somehow, or I'm not sure exactly, or maybe it's a fastest lap type thing. But
it's just random every weekend. They just press a button and say bing.
It's just weird because I've definitely seen other drivers get like more points on some weekends than others for a P1, and so it's weird. Like Alex Palou, he got 51 points this week when he won last race out in the Chevrolet Detroit Grand Prix. He got 54 points. The winner the week before that had 51. The week before that, Palou had 53. It's like every race is just like slightly off, and I'm not sure how that exactly works out, but a pretty over one race gap for Alex Palou in the championship with I think there's 10 rounds to go still, so a pretty decent sized gap, but still a good bit of racing left for the Indy Car season.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't know about the bonus rounds for Indy Car. At the end of every weekend, they have a cook-off.
Oh.
Right, yeah, exactly. Then the best cake of, the teams, they get awarded bonus points that are arbitrarily awarded to the cake. So it's yeah, that's how it works.
Gotcha.
So the race is a flat fee, and then it's the bake off afterwards where things get really kooky.
Okay, that's where all the weirdness comes in. I should have known it was something like that.
Sometimes they want the sprinkles. Sometimes they dock points for the sprinkles. Like one weekend, the chocolate's like bonus points, and then the next weekend, like you got to cook the strawberry. So these cake contests get kooky.
Yeah, and in Formula One, some weeks one person is considered to be impeding. Other weeks they're just like, no, just let it go. You never know.
Well, it's all depending on what track we're at. We all have different laws, right. All different road laws.
Exactly, exactly. But getting over into F1, so Bridgestone did submit their offer to or their bid to become F1's tire supplier. Still just rolls off the tongue so well, but yeah. So we'll find out. I would imagine. Probably sometime around the summer break, what is going to happen in terms of their bid. I'm not sure if there's any specific time frame that will be. I'm sure there is, but I don't know if that's out to the public, like when that decision will be made. But they, talking about Pirelli then a little bit, they came out and responded a little bit because George Russell, so in 2024, tire warmers are not going to be allowed in F1 anymore. They're going to be removing them from one of the like tire blankets to warm the tires is going to be, I don't know, removed for whatever reason to make things more I don't know what the reasoning behind it is. It just sounds like it's going to make it more difficult and more dangerous, which George Russell has kind of spoken out. He's like, cold tires are like, it's really hard to drive and it's not safe. And Pirelli is just basically like, hey, everyone's just going to have to get used to it and adjust to the new rules and everything. They're like, it's not our problem if it's more dangerous. That means you're not being careful enough. Which I don't know. I think it's kind of a silly thing to get rid of. I don't think that there's any like competitive advantage. Like if everyone is using these tire warmers and tire blankets and all, then it's not like any team's gaining a competitive advantage in any specific way. It's just weird to me that it's going away for one, but also that their like response was not like, oh, well, we understand the safety concerns, but this is what like Formula One is looking for in terms of like creating a more, I don't know, like baseline, like, racing atmosphere or something. I don't know what they would say. They're just like, deal with it. Sucks to have that opinion.
I'm curious, is there going to be, I imagine these teams are going to find some kind of loophole that they're going to be able to work around. So, the like carts that they have that they can carry the things on, or, that they carry the tires on. Is there a world where they just find a way to heat the compartments that the tires are all in and then like they're only pulling them out? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if
Just a mobile oven. It's like those Domino's pizza trucks that have the ovens on the side.
Kind
And
of, because if the tire warmers are just being outlawed, but they're not saying like you can't warm your tires, like if they're not saying that,
yeah,
you get what I'm saying. And now I think it'll become this weird like some teams are gonna be able to heat their tires and some aren't, depending on what what the ruling is.
yeah, and I just don't know.
If you be breathing hot on them.
Yeah, like I don't. I imagine that they are not going to allow anything like that. I'm just really not sure why it's happening. Like it seems uh, like the FIA is for it. Pirelli's like, yeah, whatever you want. Like we're good. And then I don't know. I don't see a specific reason for doing it. I feel like it's just going to make it slightly less safe, and not really add any benefit other than, I guess, particular drivers who are just like better at managing their tires just get a giant advantage, because they just like can figure it out better, or I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point, honestly. Yeah, it does sound weird to me. I have to be honest. I'm kind of with you. The safety thing really sticks out to me, like especially like on a rainy day, like at Silverstone or something. Like even then, you just got to go out on cold tires.
Oh yeah.
Because part of that is like to help with drivability. So yeah, it seems questionable. I'm interested to see how it develops moving forward.
Yeah, and so the I guess the final decision on that rule is going to happen later this year. But so far, it seems like the FIA is kind of pushing full force at that being the case. So we'll wait and see. But then just to talk about a couple of other kind of outside of the race week news, Mick Schumacher, there are rumors that he may get the opportunity to replace Logan Sargent if Logan is to replace Logan partway through the year if Logan continues his string of performances. I kind of feel bad for Logan in a way. Like I don't think he's shown any particularly good pace and all, but I feel like he at least deserves to go out through the rest of the season and I don't know, see, because the Williams car, like, yeah, well, and we'll get to it, but the Williams car has some potential in it, but at the same time, it is a pretty underdeveloped car comparatively to a number of other cars on the grid. He's a rookie driver. It's his first year in F1. It just seems like, and of course this past week, just bad luck struck him again with his engine going mid race, which didn't seem like anything that was the fault of his own. So if through all of that you're just gonna take the seat and give it to someone else, hey, that's your prerogative. But And I would not hate seeing Mick back in F1, but at the same time, I think that Logan should get the opportunity to finish out the season.
My initial instinct is that I agree with you. I'm curious, is there something going on kind of behind the scenes or in the work ethic or the practice regimen or the maybe he's just not improving at the rate that the teams thought he might based on his performances in other formulas. But you're right. I think on the eye test isn't great from the racing that we have seen, but what you've alluded to is some things that have been out of his hands, and that whether it was Mick or Logan in the car, you would have had these, DNFs or whatever, if they're like mechanical failures. But maybe it is just going to be better to get Mick back in here and at least get some pace out of the car, especially like when you compare it to Alex Albon, who just continues to what seems to be, if Logan is the benchmark, Albon is like way exceeding it.
100%.
So they're definitely looking and seeing like we basically have an empty seat in this car.
Yeah,
That's tough.
maybe they don't see like the growth potential out of Logan that they were hoping for to progress and everything, but which I can definitely understand. And that's why if he is a one season wonder in F1 and they replaced him, I get it. I just feel like with the quality of the car that they've provided out there, holding that against a rookie we saw the floor of the car compared to the Ferrari and the Red Bull and the Mercedes, and that thing looks like the downforce that it's getting from the rear or from the floor of the car is like non-existent in comparison. So understandably, it would make sense that a rookie who has no F1 experience is going to struggle in a car that doesn't create downforce with the part of the car that is the primary source of downforce in the current F1 like realm. Like right. It's bizarre to me. And so in that like sense as well, I don't think that they've given him a great car to learn with or to grow with. So it's really I struggle putting the blame on the rookie driver compared to the team that has been building these cars for years and years and years and has had the past couple of years to get up with these regulations. Like clearly, like I know there are budget aspects and all of those things as well, but I just feel like there should be a little more leeway given when it comes down to it. And looking at another kind of similar situation, AlphaTauri, there have been some rumors around the grid that Daniel Ricciardo could end up in the AlphaTauri seat of Nick DeVries as early as next year. And so it just, and I wouldn't be upset if it happened, but again, like, give him the rest of the year, let him figure it out, and then if you want to go for another driver, so be it. I just feel weird about the mid-season like driver swaps and everything, especially with rookies. I just feel like they need some semblance of an opportunity.
I would tend to agree with you. But based on what you were saying about, like, building these cars for years and years, that means these people are working around drivers for years and years and people that know cars and performance and, like, what it is to, like, improve and whatever. So you have to trust what they're seeing, I guess is what I'm getting at. However, there is something interesting from the points perspective about wanting to cut out on a driver halfway through the season. We're like, my man, Max has it's over. It's over. So
Yeah.
you're like an option, I would say, an option is to just give them what they've got. That was what was this, round 8, round 9?
8.
So they've got a bunch of races left that you can kind of groom them. And if you say like, even if we do get points, it doesn't matter. Like the real money's already gone, I think is the thing. Now I understand there's like different levels of payouts, no matter like the position and all of this stuff matters. I get that. But it does seem like the winning mentality just like it's like maybe gone too far a little bit, where it's like, well, all right, just cut your losses here. Maybe you, like you're saying, give them some time and they may turn into something for next year. You don't just like, pull the plug immediately, like abort, abort, abort. This guy's crazy. Like I don't know what the right answer is.
Right. And I that's why they have teams of people making these decisions. But I mean, you do have a point there, I guess, in terms of like Williams never thought they were going to win the constructors this year, but especially after this weekend, I'm not surprised that rumors maybe sparked up a little bit. They go from P10 in the constructors standings. Alex Albon's 6-point finish moves them up to P9 at 7 points on the season. They are 1 point behind Haas, 2 points behind Alfa Romeo. So they are easily within the realm of jumping up 2 more constructors' positions, which is like millions of euros worth of money in terms of winnings and all. So, that is a significant thing when it comes down to it. So I do understand that. It's just it's, I guess, weighing out the pros and cons, and it's I'm glad I'm not in that position.
Well, sure, because you're just stealing some dude's hopes and dreams, so giddy, and like, you saw him in Miami where he's like, I grew up around here, this is and then
it's
it's
firing
like,
someone.
Get the fuck out of here. Yeah.
Firing someone sucks. Like, even if it, like, maybe not everyone thinks that way, and there are some people that you look at and you're like, yeah, this guy's got to go. But like, when I've had to fire people and in the past, like, I am concerned about like how they're going to make ends meet and how they're going to, like, what's going to be the next thing for them, and like if like it's going to affect their family or like whatever. Like, you never want to have to fire anyone.
Right.
So it's just I definitely have that, like, that weight that comes to me when I think about it. But I mean, these guys are also they're doing okay for the most part. I would imagine financially, and there are plenty of other racing series that he might get an opportunity to drive in.
Yeah, of course.
So I can't. Like I said, I'm not the one making the decision, so I'll have to leave that for everyone else. But looking for one final little Williams bit, which I found interesting and I think would be a smart decision. James Voles, who left Mercedes and went to become the team principal at Williams this year, he kind of was talking about after the Canadian Grand Prix that he hopes that they're, like, with the budget cap, that they can kind of shift around what counts in the budget cap, because they, as Williams as a team, are making upgrades to facilities for creation of parts and things like that. But that does go into the budget cap, where he's like, hey, this should kind of be an outside expense if you want to spend the money to have a better manufacturing facility or your own individual wind tunnel or whatever else that you're utilizing. Like, that should be like an outside expense that's not counted into the creation of the car and everything for this season, because that's more of a like in for my community and everything, we call it capex, your capital expenditures, your things that you're spending money on that are just maintaining or improving the quality of the community, that aren't like the daily or yearly or monthly expenses that you're incurring, kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, looking at just kind of shifting around the way the cost cap works, which I wouldn't be surprised if they do. It's still a pretty new thing, so there's some tweaks and changes that I'm sure need to kind of happen year to year as they figure out how that works the best for kind of everyone. So
Yeah, there is only X amount, and you have to determine, or I guess what I should say is, it seems like it would be very difficult to determine what you are supposed to select for when you're dealing with like these amounts of monies, and then the consequences of those monies spent. Like, your goal is to improve data or infrastructure in some kind, in some way, right? But you don't know, like, if you go this route, do you get, like, just a blanket statement here, like, if you go this route, do you get, we'll say 12% better data, but if you go this route, you get like 50, you know what I'm saying? Like, how do you know what the thing to select for is? And that's just got to be very tough. Dealing with that kind of stuff would be difficult from a development perspective.
Well, and even the sense of like, if you're looking at this cost cap creating like a fairness in terms of like what teams are spending on their vehicles and everything throughout the year, like it's also kind of unfair to some extent if you're saying, hey, we're doing this to create some level playing field across the board, but then Mercedes in 2020 built a giant new factory to create their parts for the Mercedes cars, and Williams is using their factory from 1998 to create those parts and everything, like and to upgrade the factory. You're like, well, that's in your cost cap this year, but you're like, well, Mercedes, there was no cost cap when they made the upgrade to their facility, so like, what the fuck? It just seems like a weird thing to include, because it's I think just a kind of, in my mind, like outside expenditure. I feel like the cost cap should be related to the team's like expenses for the vehicles and creation of the vehicles for the year, and not like costs of facilities and other tertiary kind of things that the team utilizes. Like it could also cost Williams more to create parts because they are using less efficient like machinery or whatever else. And so it's like, if you're still like handicapping them in a way by saying, hey, we're trying to do this on a level playing field. So
I understand better now.
Yeah, so it's just it's a weird like thing. Like I said, I'm sure plenty of tweaks that need to be made, but I think it was when I was reading it, it sounded like a pretty reasonable kind of request for them.
Yeah, no, that makes sense to me. At first, I don't know why, I heard it as you were talking about just one single team doing that, but you're saying this was like the FIA
just as a whole. The cost cap like includes any like costs of upgrading facilities or whatever. Like, I think McLaren keeps harping on how they're using a wind tunnel from 1965 or something like that.
Gotcha.
And so those kinds of expenditures and upgrades to facilities like counted, I guess, towards the cost cap for the team on the year. So
All right. Here's what you do. You team up with another constructor that is not currently in Formula One. So what you do then, because this is all a symptom of the rat race of Formula One. God damn it. These teams with such a pressure to develop a car year in and year out, new rules, new regulations, this design, we need wind downforce this year, but now we need a front wing downforce. You know what I'm saying? Like, it just changes all the time. So you're just like chasing a dragon. So McLaren is just like, well, yeah, like, we'll do the wind tunnel later. We got to develop this car. Yeah, we'll do the wind tunnel later. And they've just been saying that for 70 years, apparently. So you just get out. You just get out of F1, but you have somebody hold your spot. And then you go in together on a wind tunnel. You basically like go in together to build your Cerebro that you can like tag team develop in, and then you can just like scoop in and out of Formula One, where the years that you're not driving, you're using all that money to develop the tech to develop Formula One cars in the future. Because everybody's trying to have a good car now, but also be able to create a good car tomorrow. You just need Aston Martin / McLaren.
And just take turns.
Right.
Just tag team it. I'd be curious how the team vote to approve that kind of thing would go across the board, but I mean,
well, of course you would have dissent from Red Bull and Mercedes, who are like, no, we have a wind tunnel, we don't care.
Yeah.
No, you can't partner with some other team,
right?
And that would be gatekeeping fun, because if their interest would really be in like having the best racing, they would want their opponents to have a good wind tunnel, and they would say, yeah, bring it on.
Just one wind tunnel, everyone takes turns.
Yeah, well, okay. Here's another take.
Everyone uses the same thing. How about we
exactly.
just everyone uses the same car?
Have you ever... No, I don't like Indy Car. Indy Car is not that great. I'm just kidding. Have you ever seen the Hunger Games, actually?
Yes, I have.
So you know how they all train like at like a hub? Like they all have to mix and mingle at a thing, but then they got to go out and like kill each other. They provide all the weapons and stuff. They provide the training. See, the FIA should have, like you said, a communal wind tunnel. Just state-of-the-art communal wind tunnel where everybody can go and, test their cars. But it's like a watering hole where you can't eat each other.
Yeah, well, it's tough because the
Panthers and the giraffes have to coexist.
Exactly, and that's the tough part. And also the sheer amount of wind tunnel time. I was going to mention it at the end, but for the second half of the season, or I guess from June 26th forward, AlphaTauri has 1,380 hours that they can use. Williams has 1,320, and it just like goes down. Red Bull at the bottom with their penalty and finishing P1 last year is down to 756 hours, which is 31 and a half days of wind tunnel time, where AlphaTauri, I forget what I said for them, it's 1,380. That is 57 and a half days of wind tunnel time that they have for the second.
Gotcha.
So a ton of wind tunnel time that they'll use. So it would probably be tough to fit everyone into the sign up sheet on the door of the wind tunnel.
All right, but what if you had like one facility, multiple wind tunnels? Now we're talking magical Christmas land, but I'm just saying there would be interesting workarounds to get yourself and your car developed,
Yeah,
and you
there,
just got to team up with Aston Martin.
there you go. But it's yeah, I don't know if there's a perfect solution, but I'm sure we'll see some tweaks and changes to the cost cap rules. But getting into our Canadian Grand Prix recap, I mentioned it earlier, but impeding. It was happening all weekend long. We had Leclerc on the radio about, oh, come on, Sonoda. He's been a bit of a bleep. I couldn't figure out what the bleep was in that. He said Sonoda is quite a bleep, to be honest. About him impeding, and I there are a number of words that obviously would fit the expletive portion of that, but I don't know if any of them quite make sense in the English language grammatically.
Do you
So
think they legit like you don't think that's just a random number, or like you don't think that's a random number of asterisks? You think that's like how many letters is in the word?
no, I just mean in general, like he said Sonoda is quite a blank, to be honest, and so
Wanker.
I don't think they'd bleep that out.
Why not?
But like also just like I don't know.
Sonoda is a cum guzzler.
Yeah, that would probably get bleeped out. But I think just there's a number of things that fit in, which was weird. Then of course we had the lovely Fernando Alonso radio message that said, "Who's the blind guy in the AlphaTauri?" during one of the practice sessions, and his team came over the radio. They're like, "Yep, that's Sonoda who's blind," which was entertaining. But we, like I said, we saw a number of issues with impeding through the weekend. We ended up with Carlos Sainz getting a penalty for impeding Pierre Gasly. Gasly was coming around on a hot lap during qualifying, and that was pretty concerning. Gasly was very vocal on the team radio about getting blocked as he's coming at 300 kilometers an hour. So Carlos got that. Then, of course, Lance Stroll got a penalty for impeding Ocon. Nico Hulkenberg got a 3-place grid penalty for, I guess it was a red flag infringement when the red flag came out right at the end of his qualifying run and everything. So it was just a crazy penalty-filled weekend, just throwing them out like candy from a parade float.
Yeah, and some of that's to be expected. Like obviously Friday and Saturday had some wet running, or like a lot of wet running, depending on how you look at it. So to some degree, like it's kind of expected, but there was some of it that borderline on unsafe, like especially like you were saying from the Ferraris and Tsunoda. So yeah, you don't love to see that, but it is somewhat of a consequence of the wet running, I think, but also to kind of extend it into like drivers are just bad people. They do it all the time in
Oh
qualifying,
yeah,
especially in Q1, Q2 when there's a lot of people that have to get around. It's just like a parking lot at those final couple turns. Everybody's
right.
slowing down, trying to get their laps in.
Well,
So
and
yeah.
it's tough there too because Canada is a pretty short circuit. Like the
Yeah.
lap times are 15-20 seconds faster than a number of the other circuits. So shorter laps, there's less room to slot in and find that gap and everything like you're saying for qualifying. But definitely a kind of just frustrating position for the drivers that are coming up on and being impeded, and also just dangerous situations like if you're not expecting it. But kind of going into the rest of qualifying, we had some wet weather on the weekend, and we had some gutsy calls. We talked about it during the race companion, but we saw Williams opt for the soft tires in Q2 early, right off the bat to go out there. Alex Albon put in some awesome laps with the soft tires to make it into Q3, where we saw Leclerc and the Ferrari team kind of balk at the decision initially, not react quickly, and end up not making it into Q3, right there with Sergio Perez, who just couldn't get a good lap time in for Q2 to make it on.
Well, and it's frustrating too for Leclerc because like he had the read for it as well. Like he knew that was the right tire to be on. Like you said, like they just didn't go for it. They didn't believe him. They didn't put their hand out and not feel the rain.
And it's honestly crazy that Ferrari has ended up like, when you flip a coin enough times, you gotta get a heads at some point. Mm-hmm. And it feels like every time they 50-50 something, they lose the Baron every time on the 50-50. Like they are like, because I listen to the team radio and Leclerc's like, yeah, we should go to softs. Like, I think that's the right move. And the team's like, I don't know. He's like, I'm pretty sure. And they're like, just set one lap on the intermediates first, and then we'll switch to the softs. And by the time that they were going to switch to the softs, the rain came down harder, and it was just too late. But they contemplated it. They're like, maybe, we'll do it in a minute. That minute never came.
Right.
So, but yeah, I mean, he had the feel. It would have been the right call. We talked about it in the race companion though too. Williams had less to lose. They're a lot less likely to make it to Q3 anyway. Mm-hmm. So risking it onto the soft tires early there is kind of a no loss situation. Like worst case, they end up in P15 to start, which is probably about where they sure. expect to start anyway. So it's like that's not the worst case scenario, but then talking about Checo, that is now 3 Q3s in a row that he's missed out on with the Red Bull, and so that is definitely a point of frustration for the Red Bull team. I would imagine that he just has not had the form that they were hoping for this last little stint.
Yeah, and especially when there are a couple other teams that are like now developing for competitive in that 2 to 4 range, that Saturday does become ever more important. Not that it isn't important, but like you want to be scoring up there as regularly as you can. And yeah, that definitely is going to make the strategy even tougher for Red Bull's pit wall when you have one driver to account for at the top and another that's like going to be fighting throughout the race. That's got to be difficult to a certain degree. Yeah, it's interesting the level of racing that we get out of Sergio versus the qualifying. He really is just stronger over the long run than he is in that one lap pace. We know he has the car for it, just not able to hook it up. So it is a little frustrating, I think, as a Sergio Perez fan.
Yeah, and I mean, just seeing him not perform to that expectation, it you just kind of like wonder why, because like you said, he has the car, but he's not able. The other teams have good enough race pace that it's not like he's going to just go from P6 to or P like 11, 12 or whatever to P2 every single race just because
Sure.
the Red Bull's fast. So they're losing out on points. Not that it matters in the constructors fight, but I mean, 3 weeks ago or before 3 races ago, when he started on this kind of stint at Monaco of not great performances in qualifying, we were like, oh, he's challenging for the title. He's right there. And now there's just this huge gap between the two of them that's just continued to grow. But yeah, another just a big standout. I mentioned it, but Nico Hulkenberg with the P2 before his 3rd place grid penalty bumped him down. Really insane performance in qualifying from him. And so now he is 6-2 in qualifying to Magnussen. Yet they're still, I think, 4-4 even up in terms of race performance finishes. And to talk briefly about what we had said earlier, Alex Albon is 8-0 in qualifying versus Logan Sargent.
That's my boy.
So
that's my red-haired wonder.
He's the only person who has a perfect record against their teammate throughout qualifying this year. Lando and Fernando Alonso are 7-1 against their teammates, but yeah, Albon has the perfect qualifying record so far.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, and so looking at that, obviously, I think that's kind of the expectation. Alex Albon has been racing for a few years in F1. He's had success. He's looked pretty good for Williams and being able to figure out that car. And for this, getting up into the top 10 for qualifying, I think he ended up starting he started P9 after Carlos had his penalty, bumped him down a couple positions. So a really good qualifying from Alex Albon from the get-go. And then, of course, as we got into the race, as we saw, just an awesome performance from him there.
Yeah, I think there was a significant amount of opportunity for him to lose that spot and just like keep on tumbling back. But I think the pit timing was really good, and then the hard stint afterwards was just like really solid. But yeah, I think there may be a good bit more to talk about here for the race. We've got to take a little bit of a puppy pause. We'll be right back. All right, and we're back from the puppy pause, talking a little bit about Alex Albon's performance. Yeah, he had that long stint, really hooked it up, got a bunch of really good points. Couple other, I guess if that's Williams. I guess the other thing to talk about for Haas, I know we talked a little bit about Hulkenberg's qualifying performance. Magnussen did like decent in qualifying as well. Unfortunately, his race got hampered by the De Vries, the other rookie that we were talking about, getting the ultimatum served to him. He took Magnussen out in unfortunate fashion there.
Yeah, well, and Magnussen after the race, he said he felt like it was just good hard racing and everything too.
Sure.
He's like, Magnussen's had incidents similarly. He's like, who am I to really argue about something like that? Like, kind of, I get it. And so, but I mean, that definitely did hamper the performance pretty significantly. I think without that little run into the runoff area and everything, Magnussen may have beat Hulkenberg this race as well in terms of the actual race finish. So definitely a pretty tough way for it to go for the Haas team after a really solid qualifying to just kind of drift back. But unfortunately, that's what we've seen a little bit throughout the season, decently consistently.
Yeah, the other driver that you could talk about, moving up the grid a little bit was Alfa Romeo is for Valtteri. This was like the worst start that he's had in a long time. It's tough to see him in this position. I feel like we've talked about this a good bit where it's just like, man, it's so tough to see him just like not have a car that he can race in because we've seen him doing it.
Yeah.
And it's not even like this like retirement phase. He's out. He's on Kimi Räikkönen mode. Like you feel like this guy still wants to compete. So yeah, it's just not coming together for Alfa Romeo or Valtteri in that scenario.
Yeah, and it's tough because Valtteri, I mean, we've seen like he has two P18 finishes and a P19 this season, but he also has two P11s, P10, and a P8. So he's gotten into the points a couple times, similar to Yuki, kind of being on the cusp of like having or more points finishes, but just not quite being able to get there. And so for this week, for him to be able to get up there, he sneaks into the points thanks to the Lando Norris penalty that got handed down. But nonetheless, a nice finish and a good point for him after, like you said, a pretty tough start to the season.
Yeah, I think another driver that we kind of keep our eye on. He's got a pretty easy teammate battle, but Yuki just continues to be battling himself. Another not great. Well, I shouldn't say another, but a not great performance here from the AlphaTauris, especially Yuki, like pretty far behind where we expect him. So not getting the what we expect to be like 1 or 2 points every weekend at this point. Kind of out of that range, and then his teammate even further back. So I think a tough day as far as just like the conversation about Yuki Tsunoda, and then just another tough weekend for AlphaTauri, I would say.
Yeah, and they just haven't been able to get it quite where they want to, but I agree. I think we've gotten used to Yuki fighting on the cusp of points, even though he hasn't he's just had the 2 points finishes so far this year. So definitely a tougher race for them. On the McLaren side as well, we kind of watched them. We're hoping for some nice progress and everything. We see Lando getting into he made that into Q3 and everything, or let me see, I was like, didn't see him for a second. Thought I was losing my mind. Yeah, so him and Piastri getting into Q3, starting in P7 P9 P7 and P8, because Piastri hopped up for the starting grid. So,
Okay.
So as a whole, like we're expecting McLaren to have a nice weekend, probably get some points. Lando's in it, and just unfortunately, and so I had to look into it. Lando got a unsportsmanlike penalty, 5 second penalty handed down, which was due to him driving too slowly when the safety car came out, so that they could double stack their pit stop, which is not an uncommon thing for teams to do, is to like try and give themselves a gap. I guess he did it in just a more noticeable manner, or this is where there's like teams do this very often when there are these situations and everything. We've talked about it. If both drivers are driving the car optimally, then both cars for the same team should be decently close together on track. If both are driving the car to the peak performance as best they can, it should be right around the same spot, as long as driver quality is like similar. So there's always going to be these situations of teams having to kind of give themselves space to do a double stack, but pardon me, but I have to check on the dog. She's getting into
go for
something.
it. No, go for it. Damn. Senna just be going crazy. We've got this podcast host. He's left all alone by his partner. She doesn't even care about the dog. She left him all alone.
God.
And Senna's just out there getting into something.
Yeah, she's being a good dog. She's just chewing on the chew that I gave her, but it's a bone, and so
Nice.
she's just like, I guess, was dropping it all over the floor, and I'm just hearing this clattering in the background. And I'm
But she's doing exactly what you wanted her to do.
yep, so she's good. So I apologize for my brief interruption, but yeah, Lando slows down a bit too much, gets draws the eye of the marshals and the stewards, and the Eye of Sauron hands down his 5-second penalty, which knocks him down from what would have been, I believe, a P9 finish and a couple points down to a P13 finish on the day.
But I do have to say, so decisions made were decisions made to help the team. I like that. And both of Norris's and Piastri's day was not decided by some type of failure, some type of lack of pace, some type of something. Throughout the weekend, they put themselves in a pretty solid position, and throughout the race then, other than, them trying to do this whole team thing and getting a little slap on the wrist, I really think they took the weekend into their own hands, like from the driver's perspective, which hasn't really been, I think last race was a good example of it as well, but you're just happy to see them be able to race and be able to improve their position if they're able to. So I think from the, if you're in the McLaren camp, I think this was a decent weekend, barring the little slap on the wrist there from Lando.
Yeah, and it sucks to not get points, but at the same time, I agree. It's progress. We're seeing them at least be competitive towards the points positions and everything.
Yeah.
Which is,
that's a good way to put it.
Good to see. And hopefully we'll continue to see that progress as we're moving forward and all throughout the rest of the year. But I think that is definitely a kind of bright spot, even though the way it ended with Lando not getting any points out of it is definitely a bummer in terms of the way that it ended up and shook out. But the pace was definitely promising.
Yeah, I think another team that had a decent weekend. I think Alpine both did really well. Both Ocon and Gasly, I think, drove a pretty good race. Now, I understood it. I think Gasly I think Ocon kind of got stuck behind Albon in his P7 but moving very slowly car. So I think his race got hampered a little bit, but still in a good fighting position. Just unfortunately he wasn't able to get the overtake done. But then you're just in this conversation of but Albon drove well to not let that happen, right? So whatever. From that regard. And then unfortunately Gasly's being impeded. Yep, thank you. From qualifying just led to just kind of a really uneventful Sunday for him, unfortunately. But yeah, I think Alpine not going to be the most pleased with the weekend, but at least it wasn't like a catastrophic weekend by any means. They still, quality finishes, you would say.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, they got some points with Ocon. Gasly made up 3 positions from where he started the race and everything, and so that's progress forward in a field that was difficult to pass in because of the DRS train that was just going on lap after lap. So not the worst way for their weekend to end. But looking at kind of, I would say, in my mind, the two biggest winners on the weekend, we of course have Red Bull, and not to knock it because it was they're historic numbers of victory. No, I mean, I wasn't gonna harp on it, but now that you're laughing, it's just dragging this out.
Well,
but
no, it just made me think of like where they talk about like it's lonely at the top. Like you're so good, people don't even want to talk about you. Like
That's
don't
fair.
mention them. They win too hard. Like now we're just shaming them.
No,
we're shaming them away.
It's not even that. It's just that like it's so easy to talk about like them because they are so successful. They've won every race so far this season. They've won 18 out of the last 19 races.
Shame.
Like it's been just
shameful.
A stretch of success for them.
Shame.
But just some big like I guess numbers for the victories. It was Red Bull's 100th win for the team, for the constructor this weekend. It was Max.
A century of victories, they called it.
Century of victories. It was Max's 41st victory as a driver. Okay, now she's making clattering noises. I'll be right back.
It's just going to be the bone. I'm telling you, it's just the same bone sound. She's just going to be out there chewing like a good little Senna, just a good dog. I literally cannot believe Colleen would leave him like this. It's just absurd. Honestly, my man needs help. He can't do it all by himself. He's just he's just a guy. He's one man. He's with a dog. The dog needs help too. The man needs help, and he was left. And it's just absurd. And now he's out here. You know, it's just making noise. It's just doing dog things. Ugh, boy. Can you imagine? Really, can you imagine? This is crazy.
Oh, man. So, but I guess that brings me back around to my point. Max Verstappen ties Ayrton Senna's career wins at 41. I've got my Senna being a little pain in the ass. Just a number. And then Adrian Newey, that was his 200th win as an engineer for a team. So 200th win across the teams he's worked for and everything. So just number of kind of historic numbers with the Red Bull victory this weekend. But the team that I definitely wanted to touch on a bit more was Ferrari, actually, because they have been they've had their struggles and everything throughout the season so far, but we did see them have a really solid finish. They started a little further back. They went on a different tire strategy, made the one stop work, end up P4, P5, which with the pace of Lewis and Fernando towards the front and Max, the 4 or 5 position, and especially with Lance Stroll only picking up 2 points, with George Russell not finishing the race for Mercedes. There was a nice little pickup of points for Ferrari there in the constructors battle.
Yeah, with a decent result from the drivers, and then also they get a little bit of leeway by having an off day from some of these other competitors that were kind of at their heels as well. So yeah, I think they get a decent weekend under their belts, where previously it's been a little hot under the collar, I think you would say.
It's just great to say that Ferrari made a good strategy call. Like, it feels good. They made the one stop work really well. They utilized the safety car to hop up some places and everything. Doing that one stopper, and went from P10, P11 to P4 and P5. That's just a nice week from the Ferraris after the tougher qualifying session.
Yeah.
So really recouping that quite a bit. But the other thing that I just like saw that I find a little curious, and I wanted to get your take. Did you feel like the Aston Martin and Mercedes teams had really closed up the gap? I know we talked about it a little bit on the race companion, but I saw all these things about, oh, it was great for Aston Martin and Mercedes to be like challenging Red Bull for pace a bit more and all, which I feel like they're slowly getting there. But looking at the pace to Max, he had, which we heard his radio message during the race, and then I got to see through Twitter afterwards. But he had a bird stuck in one of his brake ducts for the majority of the race.
Damn.
He said, like, I think it was like lap 7 or 8. He was like, oh, I think I hit a bird or something like that. And the bird was in one of his brake ducts for the rest of the race.
Cooked.
Oh, yeah.
Cooked.
Big time.
Whoa. I would love to see a picture of that. That would be hilarious.
I've got it for you. It's
Oh, hell yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'll send it over. But
I mean, okay, listen. There is, I believe the kids in the League of Legends community would just call that straight up cope. They are just breathing that copium, just saying like, we're close, aren't we? We're so close, aren't we? That's just straight up cope, thinking that like the Mercedes and the Alpine were like, or not the Alpine, the Aston Martin were like, you know, challenging for pace with the Red Bull. Like he was just gone the second the race started. He was just gone.
And we had a safety car that brought the field back together. He still wins by, like, I guess if
Great restart, by the way. You pointed that out during the race. Like, that was great, the way he did that.
He got away so quickly, and just it caught everyone off guard behind him. But, I mean, we said, like, the last race at Spain, it was a 23-second gap to the field from Max. This week, it's a 9.5-second gap, but with a bird in the brake duct and a safety car that bunched the field back up midway through. I just don't quite think that... it doesn't seem like there was that much progress actually made, or I guess as it might appear if you just look at the
17
the
seconds.
Well, yeah, if you're looking just straight at the numbers and not saying, well, that last race had no yellow, like no yellow flags, no safety cars, no virtual safety cars. The gap I don't think would be that big if there was a full clean weekend here in Canada, but
which again is why I say, yeah, it's just straight up cope.
Yeah,
they're selling some kind of story that I don't think exists.
Yeah, well, and that's like so Mercedes has talked about they're going to be bringing upgrades over the next few races into Silverstone and everything. Aston Martin apparently is going to look to bring more updates, and like the tweet about it said in an effort to to close the gap to Red Bull, and like people being like, Aston Martin believe that they can fight the Red Bull's pace based on their wind tunnel data and simulations. Are we going to see a Max and Fernando title fight? And it's like, no, the title fight's fucking over. Like, it's literally over already for the season. Like, there's no shot that there's a title fight. We may see them compete later in the season for wins, as Red Bull has already started working on next year's car, and other teams are still bringing in upgrades. But, like, no, I don't think that there's going to be a title fight. But I saw that, and I'm like... It just blew my mind. I'm like, what world are you living in that is even in the realm of possibilities? Like,
you cannot win if you're second every time.
Well, and like even looking at it, I saw a tweet about Checo's like pace or Checo's like gap to Max after 8 races last year. It was like a 22-point gap, where
Gotcha.
after 8 races this year, it's a 69-point gap or whatever. And it's like, okay, like even that is massively different year to year, and Max has like to think that the guy who's third is gonna like all of a sudden be like fighting for the championship. I'm like,
Yeah, it's
there's
wild.
not enough time. So
I imagine there is likely data from these outlets that show interest drops if a gap gets right.
oh, I'm
Like
sure.
people probably just stop turning up if like they can just
Yeah.
know now that like yeah Max wins at the end,
Well,
so they
he
kind of
could.
have to drum it up.
Yeah, and I mean he could clinch the drivers' championship super early again this year,
Yeah,
like last year, and so from
love
then
a
on.
clinch.
But I mean, we still. I don't know. Like, I don't think you're a fan of the sport if that makes you stop watching, because we still have a really tight fight for P2 in the constructors. I mean, we've got Aston Martin's only 13 points back from Mercedes at this point,
Hmm.
with Lance being kind of having a big gap between him and Fernando in performance race after race, and they're still that close. Like
Hmm.
that fight for P2, I think, is gonna go pretty close down to the wire. And I just think that there are plenty of things like that, to kind of focus on. That yeah, okay, Max cleans up the championship super early, big shocker, everyone's so surprised.
Hmm.
Oh,
Shame.
that means that the season's over. It's like, no, like there's still stuff to fight for.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely agree. But from a like us looking for conversation about the thing, it's not that refreshing to get like, well, this is like you watched. Like, are you watching the same season? This can't be real analysis here.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah,
I
so
mean
that's
it's
frustrating
those,
angle.
and it's like I don't know. These are Twitter accounts that like their entire thing is F1. They're just like posting about articles and interviews and things like that. And so I expect there to be some level of like, I don't know, brain cells to be like,
All
oh,
smooth up
or
there.
just to be like, are you excited to see Fernando fighting with Max for wins later in the season? Not
Hmm.
expecting a title fight. Like, no, there
Right.
no title fight. Like you're essentially a new like a media outlet of some sort by being this like F1, like pushing these articles and like information and everything out to the public that you find. Like, you should be able to word things a little bit better, even if
Agreed.
it's like an error there. But I digress. That was I just found it amusing. But looking forward, we've got a week off, and then we're back racing. Coming up in it's where's next? Austria, I guess.
Nice.
So we have the
Gotta be a good
Austrian Grand
race.
Prix in 2 weeks. So brief off week for F1, but we'll have plenty of F1 content, and I'm sure League of Legends to talk about next week. Speaking of, why don't we get into some of the League of Legends from this past week?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's start over in the LCK. But first, let's just take a little side detour. I was looking, checking the scores, see who's at the top of the standings over in North America, and I was like, wait, what is this? What is NRG? And I was like, wait, they have a team playing in the Valorant tournament right now. Who are they? And I find out they bought up CLG's spot in the NALCS and all, and now also have a Valorant roster. So I was like, okay, that's pretty cool.
And they've been around for a bit. Like they were in North America
Yep.
previously at one point in time, and so they've kind of rebranded a bit before taking over the LCS spot for CLG. But I don't think I had realized that CLG, like, moving out of LCS meant like immediately. I thought that
Right.
it was like at the end of this year kind of thing. I don't recall if there's been any other times that I've seen a team halfway through the like season other than like with relegation. Or I don't even think relegations just happened at the end of the year. There weren't like mid-season relegations. So I don't recall any other time that a team has just like rebranded or been bought out mid-season.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe there's some kind of like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, kind of just little bit bizarre. But yeah, like you said, taking over that CLG spot. And so not the hottest start for the squad out of the gate with a 1-2 first week. But at the top, you see the good old trusty Team Liquid Cloud9 undefeated at the top. So LCS is starting off just about how you would expect it to.
Bro, I'm just waiting for, like, it's so easy to be blabber when you're back in North America. You don't have any fucking scary Koreans to play against. Oh no, I clicked my flash. It's so easy to be blabber back in NALCS. I'm just looking forward for M&S to be exposed for the fraud that he is. I don't.
Pretty harsh.
I don't believe in this guy. But yeah, it's an exciting start for Cloud9. Other than that, I'm a big fan.
Yeah, I mean, other than your hatred of the blabberfish, I think it's kind of what we expected as the start for LCS. Cloud9, of course, being one of the teams to go over to MSI. Golden Guardians, the other team, not as hot of a start with a 2-2 start, but they started out 0-2 and picked up 2 wins in a row. So kind of getting back on track. And then, yeah, I think then we can start moving over to the LPL and LCK with that for the week.
Sure, and I mean, I'm just clowning your boys. I'm just I'm just poking fun over here. Obviously, I think they're playing some decent League of Legends. But yeah, over in the LCK, we took a look at Damwon versus Nongshim. 2-0 for Damwon, but what I thought was pretty interesting was the just like this seemed like the example of a meta that has just gotten so rife with like must picks, must bans. There are just so many really strong champions that even when overall, I have to say, like, I even kind of like Nongshim's draft. The Azir to me might be a bit questionable, but everything else seems pretty fine from both drafts. Even like the bans are on point from red side as well. I think there's just like this big concern for the early pressure that the Nico can apply. You pair that up with Showmaker's LeBlanc, and now all of a sudden your early game, you are just hitting like a truck as well. There's something interesting you can do as well with the Nico in pick and ban where you can flex her into solo lanes as well. So there's a sense in which you're even using that as you have a little bit of a mind game going into the pick and ban with the Nico here. So just so much power kind of on both sides being grabbed up and taken away. And the reason I highlight the like how many OPs there are, like even in the following game where the Nico, the Vi's still out, Annie's out, Draven's out now, Maokai's out, like there's still all of these really OP champs, like okay, but now it's the Milio now and the little cat and Desante got through. No, oh, the Quesante, he's in the, oh.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so many must-ban champions, and, you know, you get this matchup for Canna versus, I guess it's Dan. This matchup for Canna versus Dan, where he just goes 3-0 against the guy, just solo lanes, and it's not even that wins the game. It's the pressure that creates where Sejuani can no longer go top. Like,
yeah.
it's just over. That's going to be a double kill every time. So all Sejuani can do is just walk into bottom lane where Canyon's just like, hey, hello, I've set up my campsite here because I know you're not going anywhere else. So he was just there to, like, counter gank these engages every time. And it's just like, man, this gets really tough when you have, like, great players on these just obscenely powerful champions. And we see Canna, I mean, in game 2, it's, you know, it's the Quesante just going ham. And I think good awareness from Canyon as well.
Yeah, and talking about like champion picks a bit as well. Like you said, there are all these pick ban champions. Nico has been 100% pick ban in the LCK, with being banned 48 times and picked 4 times. So it barely ever sneaks through. Vi similarly banned out 42 times. Cassante 35, Annie 30. So there are all these champions, and the list of champions that have been banned out in half of the games basically is 6 champions long. So you're basically spending your entire first round just banning out these things in most cases. But one that I think is interesting in terms of item changes and whatnot that we're seeing throughout the other leagues and got played twice in this series was the LeBlanc from Showmaker. So LeBlanc now with the Static Shiv rush, with the Static Shiv being brought back into the game, it is doing tons of damage in terms of the auto attacks and everything and the procs that it's getting off. We're seeing players get just thousands of damage like throughout the game just from the Static Shiv procs and everything. And so you're not losing. You have to like shift your play style a little bit. It's not just the jump in and nuke someone out. You still can get that a little bit, but the Static Shiv and Lich Bane to be able to proc some pretty serious damage off of the other team as you're going in with the LeBlanc. It shifts the play style, but I think that is going to be a really heavily pick ban champion kind of moving forward, as it's really now jumped up to probably the top 2, if not top kind of mid lane pick, next to probably the Nico right now in the meta.
Yeah, and there's something interesting about that, and it feels like exactly what LeBlanc needs. Like, she does just really struggle with the wave clear in the early game, so getting that really helps with the wave clear, and then, as you're saying, just can apply so much AoE damage in the course of a fight, as long as you're weaving in those auto attacks in between your spell casts. So yeah, really interesting build, I think, coming out for the LeBlanc. The quote unquote, I would call it like a soft counter pick, and Cassiopeia comes out for quad on the other side, trying to get the miasma down on top of the LeBlanc so she can't, be distorting away from everybody. But it didn't end up going that well as far as like a counter pick goes. There was just so much pressure coming from the other lanes that like it just never ended up mattering.
And with that play style for the LeBlanc, it's like it doesn't entirely matter if she's stuck in one place, because she's actually just happy to throw out auto attacks and everything too. So it's like right now, like I think that was probably one of the best options to try and counter it, but I just don't know if there's a perfect solution. So honestly, I just kind of expect that to be banned out for the next stretch of games and everything. Over in the LCK, we saw it get banned out by T1 both games that they played against Kwangdong Freaks. And we're seeing it get played pretty much any time that it didn't get banned after it first got picked up in this week in the LCK.
Yeah, and obviously, like, she is not, she being LeBlanc the champion, is not a champion that is, like, out of the meta anyway, or, like, what would you say? She's a champion that we've seen being played competitively, so all it took was just like this sweet new item build that brings her back into the meta, and now all of these players are going to be able to pick back up what is like it's a comfort champion for so many of these players is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and so after like all of week 1, she was banned out twice, played none in the LCK. To halfway through week 2, just becoming a pick ban champion with this new item build and everything that was figured out. It definitely is a comfort pick for players to go back to, and so with that, I fully expect that to be hopping up on that ban priority along with. I mean, there are just kind of too many. It's becoming again the what do we let through, or how many OPs do we let through to try and take the ones that we want, more so than, okay, like, let's ban these couple things and then we can play our normal strategy. I think we'll start leaning towards that, and which we'll see, just teams trying to figure out different strategies that work around some of these stronger picks.
And just thinking of teams that are going to utilize them, T1, Faker's LeBlanc career, 59 games, 49 wins.
I was going to say,
10 losses. That's an 83% win rate.
Yeah, which is just obscene.
Wicked cool. He's also 6-0 in Riven in his career, by the way. Just interestingly, I wouldn't. The only reason I say that is not to be like, just I wouldn't have guessed that, and I have no idea when those games were played.
I know that there were a few. I think it was back season 4 to 5. It was when Zed. Well, it was when Zed had come back into the meta a little bit. It was like a mid Zed counter where if he like went in on you, you could stun him up and then like go through
just had the trade.
And yeah, so I do vaguely remember that. I think it was right around that, like season 4, season 5.
6-0 on it, he killed. But yeah, the LeBlanc pick going to be super strong. I think moving into this meta ahead of us, going to be some teams that are going to be able to utilize it a little bit better. Now, was there an LPL series that you wanted to talk about this week?
Not in particular. To be honest, I didn't really get to check out too much, but
no worries.
Just in terms of, I kind of wanted to just look back at the standings primarily because things have shifted around a little bit. We have, of course, JDG still up there, tied for first at 7-1. But Billy Gaming, continuing their solid performance. They're up there at 7-1, tied with JDG and Top Esports. And so looking at their last little stretch here of matchups and everything, Billy Gaming 2-0'd LNG, who are doing pretty decently this split, which was in contrast to the spring LGD was having, I'm mixing up LGD and LNG. No, so LNG was third last split at the end of the split, so definitely a decent competitor for Billy Gaming to beat. They did get 2-0'd by JDG in that rematch from MSI and everything that we saw, so JDG still putting up some really good performances, but they had another 2-0 versus Thunder Talk Gaming, a 2-1 versus Anyone's Legend. So Billy Gaming has kind of come out and this was where I felt like we would see those tests a little bit more of if they were actually stacking up or just beating up on the bottom of the table. Of course, like I said, they get 2-0'd by JDG, but have maintained that overall win rate to stay up there fighting at the top.
Sure. And I mean, based on the history that we know BLG and JDG have, like, very recently, they have a lot of matchups against each other. It is going in JDG's favor, so, like, yeah, not the worst thing. Still have a pretty solid record. Up at the top of the standings. So yeah, I don't expect Billy Gaming, other than JDG, maybe a World Elite Top Esports, to really give them some trouble.
Yeah, but I'll have an LPL matchup for us to check out next week. But I just kind of wanted to go through a quick rundown of how the standings were looking and some of those results from this past week.
No, that's all good. I just wanted to talk a little bit before we get into the flavor of the week here. Just talk a little bit about the Masters Tokyo tournament going on for Valorant, hosted by Riot Games, I guess you would say. It's been really fun. Obviously, like, to be fair, it's on the other side of the planet, so matches are starting at like 10:30 p.m. So I'm really only able to get like one. I've only been able to watch like kind of one series an evening, but I've been tuning in when I can. Overall, I think the games have been super fun. I'm not really going to go into like heavy detail about anything crazy. Just from my end, I think you can kind of expect this. I just want to highlight two of the casters. One of the casting teams, I should say, is Pansy and Hypoc. Both of them, I think, do a really great job. They have wonderful synergy together. Like, you can tell they enjoy watching Valorant together. Like, it's like it's not just two people doing their job. Like, they genuinely enjoy talking about it, and that comes off in the cast, that they are having a good time watching, so that's really fun. Mostly the team that I've been kind of paying attention to is Fnatic's run through. Their core has been together since the start. They were at the very first tournament for Valorant. So as far as like talking about experience, they have it, right? Boaster, Alphair, and Durka have all been playing, I believe, since the inception of the Fnatic roster, or at least soon thereafter. So Boaster, IGL for Fnatic, I believe is their smokes player traditionally. I don't know if his like role has changed, but Fnatic threw out their run 2-0 NRG, which was like the old. There was like an I forget what the core of the team was from. Maybe it was like Optic Gaming, I think, where the core of the team, it was like Optic Gaming, and then they brought in I can picture him. I can't think of his name. It was the operator player, the jet player for the FPX squad last year. Artis is the name of the guy. He's their jet player for NRG. Unfortunately, they get knocked down to the losers bracket by Fnatic. Have a really solid run right up until they meet Paper X. But overall, I think Fnatic has been really fun to watch. But one of the angles for this year, being a Riot developed game, new heroes, new patches, new maps all the time. So for this tournament, Lotus was live. The big gimmick is there's like these rotating doors that have buttons that you hit, and then they just start turning. And then the idea is you like find peaks you can either get through, but then they're closed, and now like that route's closed off for a little bit. So like, and they make a massive amount of noise. Obviously, you can see these massive doors opening. So it's this like information kind of trying to play both sides of these rotating walls, which I think from that perspective is really fun. We see some teams utilizing it better than others, obviously. Paper X utilizing a character called Gecko. more than other teams are. People aren't like 100% sold on it, but it gives you some interesting like entries and like early round options with some of the tools that he has. So Paper X kind of using that to their advantage. Bringing us up to speed, we have Fnatic last night just ends Evil Geniuses, like what up until this point has been a miracle run. Like this team, I believe it's their first season. So they are getting deep into this tournament. Some of their players are just coming up huge, but I think most importantly, they're playing together really well. They look like a team. They look like they enjoy being together. They enjoy playing the game together, whatever that system is. The coach is speaks about her players in a way that just exudes confidence. Like confidence is literally just like leaking off of these dudes. They are playing very well, but they meet up against Fnatic in the upper bracket finals. They go down 2-1. I believe they win. They won Fracture game 2. They lost on Lotus 13-3. Pretty heavy. Map 3 was pretty close. It comes down to this like insane. It was about to be 12-12. It comes down to this insane like boasters like diffusing. EG comes around, kills the diffuser, but Leo on Fnatic like has the cross, so all the CTs were dead like before. Like it just the deciding of that map was like fractions of a second, right? So it was wild. Could have been 12-12, could have went to overtime. But Fnatic into the grand finals. But Evil Geniuses gets another chance against Paper X. Not that they have played them, but
another with the losers bracket and everything. And just looking at like you were saying about the run, so Fnatic, 2-0's NRG, 2-0's Paper X, then goes on to face EG, who had gone 2-0 in both of their group matches to make it to the playoffs, and then 2-0's Loud, 2-0's Team Liquid. So they had 2-0'd 4 teams in a row leading into that matchup versus Fnatic. So yeah, like having some swagger, having some cohesion, feeling good. Tight matchup with Fnatic, but definitely I without having watched any of this tournament, I'm gonna say EG is gonna get their rematch because
that'd be wild.
With Fnatic 2-0ing Paper X earlier in the playoffs, and then EG almost getting going to overtime in map 3 against Fnatic. I would say that sounds like they have the or have been playing better up until this point. But I mean, at these tournaments, anyone can have a good day or a bad day and shake things up. So
I do believe if like I kind of agree with you. I think Evil Genius could get the better of Paper X there. So let's say we have a Fnatic Evil Genius grand final rematch from the upper bracket final. I think the one thing that is going to be wonky is the Lotus, where Evil Geniuses either has to really improve that map for themselves, or they ban it and then leave Fnatic kind of open to something else. So I think the map pool may look a little bit better for Fnatic in this scenario, just because their Lotus has looked better than other squads and they're more willing to pick it, which I think is always fun going into these tournaments, like who really has like practiced up on like the new map that's going to be live. So that could be an interesting wrinkle going into the grand finals. But yeah, overall I think it's just been a really fun tournament. Pansy and Hypoc have been awesome casters, but yeah, it's just been super fun.
And just one final note that I just was looking at the finals kind of setup, but Fnatic would actually get a 2-map ban advantage in that as well. So they would ban 2 maps to whoever their opponent is, banning 0 as the team coming from the upper bracket and everything.
Oh, that's a sick advantage.
So pretty huge, especially since it sounds like Lotus is one that they are playing pretty well on to
Yeah.
avoid that potentially being banned out by whoever their opponent is. That's a big advantage for them.
Yeah, so could have a really interesting grand final. I'm guessing that's this weekend. I can't
Yep.
imagine it's
So
like
it'll be
during the
on.
week.
It looks like Saturday night. But the semifinals is going to be Friday
Gotcha.
night.
Okay. Yeah. So weekend gaming, of course. So yeah, definitely looking forward to that. But Aaron, let's get these people out of here. Give
All
me your
right.
flavor of the week.
So I'll run through it pretty quick, but this past weekend was a grocery shopping weekend for Colleen and I. We do every other. So we always go to this little market next to the Trader Joe's we go to. We get some sushi grade ahi tuna, and we make some homemade poke bowls. So that was on the menu this past week, and it's always a solid option. For my and I put two foods. I did not put a music down. So
Oh, dude, that's sick. Give us two foods for the week.
second food was just Colleen and I. So I had gotten a not perfect bill of health the last physical I had at the doctor with some high cholesterol. Said no, not as many red meats. So we've been supplementing with some fish, but I've been working on sauces for tilapia that we'll have, and so we usually do like tilapia over rice or something with a vegetable. And I've been making a like lemon sauce, like lemon juice sauce to go over top of it and everything, and I've been kind of tweaking it and fiddling with it week to week. But I think I did a pretty solid job this last time. I kind of kept it relatively simple, but I think it was, in my opinion, the best one yet. I would have to ask Colleen.
Simple is good.
But yeah, not trying to do too much with it. So those are my two foods for this week. And my visual medium, Colleen and I restarted watching. We had only watched one episode before, but the show Righteous Gemstones on HBO. It's a I can't think of the guy's name. It's not John C. Reilly. Well, so Adam Devine is in it, or Devine, however you say his last name. Danny McBride is also in it, and so the theme of the show is they are children in where their dad is this like historic, long-standing like mega pastor with the giant churches and the TV like stuff that all the way back to like the 70s, and so they're living in the life of luxury as these like Christian folk, and it kind of goes into their some craziness in their story and whatnot. So it's entertaining. It kind of makes fun of the whole like mega church like whole thing in general, and how it kind of goes after just being like, this is kind of a crazy thing that some of these pastors and families are like flying private jets and like have all this wealth when it comes back to the church. Hey,
not the private jets. You have to have a private jet because you have to be closer to God to hear him.
Exactly.
You actually have no idea what you're talking about. You got to be up in the sky to hear God best.
That's true.
Why
I've never been on a PJ, a private jet before, so I guess
I'll give you a pass here, but
I should not speak on things that I do not know.
Exactly. They need them to hear God.
Exactly. But yeah, so that's my visual medium. It's a funny show. It's been fun picking it back up. But that is my flavor of the week for this week.
Well, I'll start where you finished off. So me and Sarah finished the Legend of Korra season 4, end of the
Nice.
show. Really like actually beautiful wrap up. It ends I think about as good as any show can wrap up something that you've spent time with, characters that you really like know and love and whatever. Yeah, I think it did a great job. It didn't get too, over here, didn't get too over there. It just tied up the stories that it had open, and that was it. And like throughout
Nice.
the rest of the show, it did a good job to like there weren't very many loose ends. You're not left really wondering. You're just kind of like, oh, that was like a beautiful ending to the show. So I think that was great. My food here for the week. Sarah makes a pretty good chicken tortilla soup. You've probably
Mm,
heard me bring it up here before. This time she added in, if usually she does a half a jalapeno, this time she threw the whole jalapeno in. It's got a lot of kick this time, which is like actually very tasty.
oh
I'm a
yeah.
big fan. So tortilla soup going crazy. And then my music here for the week, bit of a weird one, but I don't know if like I don't know if like Venus is in retrograde or whatever, but I've just had like these weird jingles in my head from like old like TV commercials. It's almost like my
Okay.
head is just like tuned to like 90s TV or something. Like do you remember like the Crumbelievable for like Kraft blue cheese crumbles where it's like yo
No.
Crumbelievable. It was like a bag of blue cheese that you could get and they like, hijacked that song, just
No,
weird things. Go ahead, sorry.
no, I don't remember that. The one that immediately popped to my mind was sock and boppers,
There
way
you
more
go.
fun than a pillow fight.
There,
Yeah.
yes, there you go. Just all of these weird, like, yeah, weird jingles just being piped into my head, and then I'm such a motor mouth, like I can't not sing them.
Oh, that's funny.
I'm just I'm just being channeled. The music is just channeling through me.
Well,
So
talking
yeah,
about being close, it's like you're speaking in '90s tongues.
one could say that I might need a private jet to get closer and investigate these.
There you go.
So yeah, just a wild and wacky one here. But yeah, that's all I got.
Nice. Well, of course, as always, that does wrap up the episode for us this week. As always, check us out on YouTube if you want to see our smiling faces. We're on Spotify, Google Podcasts. Hit us up on Twitter at tall and short of one, the number one. But we really appreciate everyone taking the time to tune in with us and for bearing with me with the puppy pauses throughout the episode today. I appreciate that on my end big time. So.
And like I'd said earlier, new episodes every Thursday. We just appreciate you listening so much. We really appreciate your time. So just thank you for being here. This has been another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
See ya.